Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Reggie Abrams. I'm here to serve as the chairman of this year's Holocaust Remembrance program. Not long ago, there was a survey of about 53,000 people across the globe, and only 54% had ever heard of the Holocaust. Even more disturbing, 32% of these believed that the event to have been greatly exaggerated or was a myth. The study showed, along with ignorance about the Holocaust, that anti-Semitism is again increasing around the world, and so is hatred of other groups. This remembrance service marks the 34th year that the Shreveport and Bossier City communities gathered to learn about the Holocaust. We believe that by facing the reality of the inhumanity of that period, we learn to treat each other with humanity. It is with this humbling task that it is my honor to welcome you to the 34th Holocaust Remembrance Service. We are grateful to First Baptist Church Shreveport for opening their doors to us here for our service today. And I'd like to invite their senior pastor, Dr. Jeff Raines, to offer the benediction.
Thank you. We are honored to host this event and to be a part today. Let us pray together. Dear God, we come today to remember and to tell the truth about suffering and about silence and about the very worst evil that blights humanity, creatures in your image. And Father, I pray that we will not forget the overwhelming suffering from the Holocaust. And I pray that today we will not be forgetful or complacent or complicit or silent in the face of evil. And Father, give us courage to pursue your truth in the face of falsehood, and help us to live with faith in the midst of suffering, and help us to live with hope in the strong assurance of your eternal kingdom. Father, today help us to listen and to learn and to remember. In your name we pray, amen.
At this time, it is my honor to invite Mayor Ollie Tyler of Shreveport and Mayor Lo Walker of Bossier City with a joint proclamation to present.
Good afternoon. We too would like to thank Pastor Raines and First Baptist Church family for hosting this event this year. My good friend, Mayor Lo Walker, and I do this each year, and we are just honored to be among you today to remember and pay tribute to those who endured a terrible time in world history. We believe it is incumbent upon us all as leaders in our community to educate young people about history, the good and the bad. It is important that we set aside time to reflect upon past tragedies so that we can be sure never to repeat them again. Therefore, we are pleased to stand here today, Mayor Walker and I, to present this proclamation that declares today as Shreveport-Bossier Holocaust Commemoration Day. And it reads, and I'm going to read the first part. Mayor Walker and I agreed to do that together. Whereas the Holocaust was a systemic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments, and whereas the cities of Shreveport and Bossier City, our nation, the land of the free, should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, hatred, persecution, and tyranny.
And whereas we should actively rededicate ourselves to the principles of individual freedom, justice, national liberty, and equality. And whereas the cities of Shreveport and Bossier City wish to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect for all of humanity. Now, therefore, we, Ollie Tyler, Mayor of the City of Shreveport, and me, Mayor of the City of Bossier City, do hereby proclaim Sunday, April 23rd, 2017, as Shreveport-Bossier Holocaust Commemoration Day in the cities of Shreveport and Bossier City, and in honor of the survivors as well as the rescuers and liberators. We urge all citizens to strive to overcome intolerance and indifference through learning and remembrance. And witness thereof, we have hereunto set our seals to the cities of Shreveport and Bossier, and it's signed by both of us, and we are proud to have just a very small role in this so important event today. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have this dance?
We are taught that while Jews were being sent to concentration camps and gas chambers, they did not lose faith. Cantor Neil Schwartz will sing the song that many sang on their way to their deaths. We light these 11 million candles to humbly represent, in our small way, the 11 million victims that the Holocaust claimed, 6 million Jews and 5 million others, which included LGBTQ individuals, the physically and mentally disabled, the Romani people, the Slavs, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian priests and other clergy, courageous resistors, black, mulatto adults and children, anyone related to any of the above, and many others. If we were to try to honor the memory of each individual with a minute of silence for each one, we would be standing here for 11 and a half years. Instead, survivors, their descendants, and our local officials will now light 11 candles in memory of the 11 million. I call up Don Webb, whose family took in Jewish children during the war. I call up Gisela Lizada, our survivor. I call up Nico Van Tine, child of survivors. I call up Tammy Wilson, child of survivors. I call up David Ginsburg. His grandparents fostered young brothers from Germany during the war. I call up Ben Sauer, the current president of the North Louisiana Jewish Federation. I call up Gary Abrams, president of B'nai Zion congregation. I call up Howard Silberman, the president of Agudath Achim Synagogue. I call up Michael Guggenheim, the son of a survivor. I call up Armin Guggenheim, Holocaust survivor. And I call Senior Pastor Dr. Jeff Raines, First Baptist Church, Shreveport. Thank you all. May the memory of all who lost their lives during the Shoah be a blessing to us all. To remember the lives that were lost during one of humanity's worst periods, our community remembers the Holocaust with this annual memorial service. Through our remembering and active cooperation, we strive to obliterate injustice. Because our future is only as strong as our youth, we are continuing our annual writing competition to encourage students to voice their understandings of the tragedy of the past and their hopes for the future. Every year, the North Louisiana Jewish Federation helps coordinate and sponsor a literary essay contest for area students. This year, about 110 essays and poems from local middle school, high school, and college students were submitted for our Holocaust literature contest. First, I'd like to thank all of our judges. The college-level entries were read by respected members of the community at large. High school-level entries were read by professors at LSUS. Excuse me. coordinated by Dr. Terry Harris, who's the chair of English and Foreign Languages at LSUS. The middle school level student essays were read by high school teachers. Before we announce the winners of the competition, we would like to honor the teachers who had students submit entries. This year, teachers who had students submit entry essays were honored with $25 gift cards to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. When I call your name, please come to Kathy Plant, immediate past executive director of the North Louisiana Jewish Federation, for your card. And please wait until all names are called before we thank them. I'd like to call April Carberry from Byrd High School and Christine Fondren from Evangel High School, Emily Mayer from Byrd High School, Deborah Moorhead from Caddo Magnet High, Dion Procell from Caddo Magnet High, Sham Bradford from Uri Middle. I hope I'm saying this correctly. Is it Mime or Mime Graham from North Caddo Middle? Susan Gray from Uri Middle, Katie Poland from Uri Middle, and Lynn Tibbett from Herndon. And if teachers brought at least 3 students with them, they will be given a $25 gift card. If you have 3 students that you see as you poke around and you take a look, please come up to Kathy. Thank you. You didn't have to bring them in your car if you see them. I realize we should probably make that more clear when we say if you bring them. It's very, very important to us that we encourage student participation. Mr. Abrams told you about a number that's almost half of all of the people in this world don't know that there was a Holocaust, and the numbers are higher among our local students. And so it is important for us to continue to remind them in whatever ways we can to encourage that they think about it, consider it. We try to do it in positive ways. So this year's middle school prompt, they were asked to read quotes from 2 Holocaust survivors. In Elie Wiesel's Nobel acceptance speech, he says, "And that is why I swore never to be silent when and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." Miles Lehrman, another Holocaust survivor, argues, "A perpetrator is not the most dangerous enemy. The most dangerous part is the bystander, because neutrality always helps the killer." The students were asked to write a researched essay about a Holocaust rescuer, someone who was not a bystander. Before I announce the winners, I want you to look around, because I'm going to suggest that if something horrible were to happen in our community, these are the people that I hope we can count on to be rescuers, to not be bystanders. Nobody looked. Everybody looked at me. Look around. These are the people I want you to count on. I hope that you are someone that I can count on. Please look around. Please get to know each other, because ignorance breeds fear and fear breeds hatred. Please get to know each other. The students were asked to write the essay. I am proud to announce the middle school winners of the 2017 literary competition. When I call your name, please come to Kathy Plant to receive your award. The 3rd place middle school essay winner was Tyler Walker. The 2nd place middle school essay, Tyler won $50. The 2nd place essay winner is Nathaniel Bontz, who won $100. And the 1st place middle school essay winner is Marie Gill, who won $200. Come stay here for 1 second while we see all of you. These are our middle school students who won. They were all from Uri Middle. These students very eloquently explained what it means to be a rescuer and to be brave in the face of adversity. All of their winning essays will be posted online at the website. Thank you. You may be seated. The high school essay prompt were presented with 3 lessons. One is the importance of Holocaust remembrance, the responsibility of memory. Lesson 2 was the danger of state-sanctioned incitement of hatred and genocide, the responsibility to prevent. The 3rd lesson was the danger of silence, the consequences of indifference, and the responsibility to protect. Each lesson included lengthy quotes. All of the details are found online at the Holocaust Remembrance website. The high school students were asked to submit an essay or poem about one of the lessons. The high school students were given an option to write an essay or a poem. The essay winners, the 3rd place winner for an essay won $100, and I would like to call up Madison Atkinson. The 2nd place winner won $200 gift certificate. I'd like to call Cade Cranwell. And the 1st place winner of a $400 gift certificate is Dylan Tynes, and they were all from Byrd High School this year. Thank you. The poetry winners for the high school competition, the 3rd place was a tie between Lisa Harmon and K.L. Henderson. They each win a $100 gift certificate. Please come up. The 2nd place poetry winner, who won a $200 gift certificate, is Cynthia Ginn. And the 1st place winner for the poetry entries, who won a $400 gift certificate, is Sadie McGuire. And we've asked Sadie to please read her entry, her winning entry, to us this year. But first, I want to congratulate all of our winners and all of our teachers for their submissions. This is our future, and these are our rescuers and our heroes. Thank you for stepping up to that already. We appreciate you. Sadie, please come up.
My poem is titled Of Hate and of Evil. Humans have a way of forgetting what they don't want to remember. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to hear of the men ripped from their families and stripped naked to work until they are dead, while their children are quickly and efficiently stacked in a shower and gassed. And if you hear a Holocaust joke, you laugh, because that's easier, more convenient for you from where you sit, shoving pretzels down your throat with your feet propped up as you watch Family Guy. That was a long time ago, you think. What does it matter to me? Well, I'll tell you why it matters. You've heard of Anne Frank. Yes, of course I know about Anne Frank. Who doesn't? Simply terrible, you say, as you change the channel. Okay, you know Anne Frank, but do you know Zygmunt Adler? Gassed at 7 years old, gassed before he had even begun to have a life. Have you heard of Judith Deichter? An elderly woman made to march miles to the gas chambers, killed quickly because she was too old to work to death.
Stop for a second. You have to go slow. There's a big echo here.
Ida Edelstein, forced to stand naked in a line of women like so many horses as Nazis decided whether she was strong enough to scrub sidewalks. She was not. Yakov and Chava Biber, their 2-year-old son gunned down as they fled the Gestapo, killed before their very eyes, and still they had to run. Countless universes shattered by murder, torture, and rape, and as you clutch your daughter's ears to shield her from the fact that I just said rape, I say, let her listen. Let her listen and let her ask why. Let her ask why, and you tell her. Teacher of hate and of evil, an entire country turned against an entire race. Let her listen and leave nothing out, because if you forget, it could be her tomorrow. And I'm sorry if this inconveniences you, if it makes you shift uncomfortably in your seat, but you cannot forget. You cannot forget because somewhere you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, friends, and they deserve to be laid to rest in an 8x3 plot of earth when God decides that they are good and ready, not stacked in a pit like so many pieces of furniture from a burned-out house, not even given the dignity of dying with their clothes on, because a Führer decides that he doesn't like that they greet their friends with shalom. Thank you.
In Israel, this is called the Day to Remember the Holocaust and the Resistance. There was resistance. At this time of year, in the middle of the war, the remaining Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto revolted and held the ghetto against the Nazis right outside the walls for a solid month until the Nazis simply burned it to the ground and below. Hirschglick knew of this and wrote this song. It became the anthem of the Jewish partisan resistance throughout Europe almost instantly. I'll do a verse in Yiddish and a verse in a single English translation. Sag nicht einmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleien auf verstellen bläue Tag, willkommen wird noch unsere ausgebänkte Show. Später poikt und unser Trott, wir seien da. Willkommen wird noch unsere ausgebänkte Show. Später poikt und unser Trott, wir seien da. Never say this is the final road for you, though leaden skies may cover over days of blue. As the hour that we long for is so near, our step beats out the message, we are here. As the hour that we long for is so near, our step beats out the message, we are here. This song was written with our blood and not with lead. It's not a little tune that birds sing overhead. This song a people sang amid collapsing walls. With grenades in hand they heeded to the call. This song a people sang amid collapsing walls. With grenades in hand they heeded to the call.
Our speaker today is Armin Guggenheim from Cleveland, Ohio. Armin is a Holocaust survivor who came to this country in 1939. He graduated from Michigan University in 1953 with a BBA degree. He obtained a real estate license in 1954 and started to sell residential real estate. He opened Guggenheim Realty in 1959 and became a broker owner of 5 offices and 100 salespersons real estate company. He sold this company in 1982 and then concentrated on acquiring and managing commercial real estate. In 1980, he served as president of the Cleveland Area Board of Realtors. In 1987, he served as president of the Ohio Association of Realtors. He was named the Realtor of the Year for Ohio in 1981. Armin was also very involved in fair housing and affirmative marketing to minorities in the 70s and 80s, serving as chairman of the National Association of Realtors Equal Opportunity Committee in 1985. Presently, he is in partnership with his son, Michael, in owning, brokering, and managing real estate in Cleveland and the surrounding area. He is most proud of his family and his marriage of 56 years to only one wife, with 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Please help me welcome Armin Guggenheim.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come to Shreveport through the invitation, basically, of my cousin, Kathy Plant. And she is somehow involved in my life. The subject of my speech is Lucky Me. And as I reflected on my life, I've put together a slide presentation that talks in terms of everything that I experienced in my life. We have to go back to the year that I was born, 1930, and Hitler came into power in 1933, and the population of the entire German country was 505,000 Jewish people, which at that time was less than 1% of the Jewish population. Hitler was in prison in the 20s, and he had written a book, Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf was my fight, and it denoted his hatred of the Jews throughout the world. The book blamed all of Germany's problems on the Jews. Germany at that time was involved in high inflation. They were involved in high reparations left over from World War I, and there was a tremendous unemployment. So he came into power basically because Germany didn't want communism, so events led to Hitler's coming into power. But when Hitler came into power, he had a bunch of disciples, and the disciples decided to really, really put the screws to the Jewish people. So in 1935, he passed the Nuremberg laws. The Nuremberg laws took citizenship rights away from the Jews, and he declared the people to be Aryan, which were pure-blooded Germans, and non-Aryans, which were all the other people, including gypsies and mentally disabled, but primarily the Jewish population of Germany. So the first citizen laws against them was to take away the citizenship rights and the right to intermarry. You could not have dating between Jewish people and non-Jewish people. So at that time, these were some of the laws that came into being. Number one, there were boycotting of Jewish businesses. Jews were now out in public places. You could not go into parks. You could not go into theaters. You could not go on streetcars. You could not use sidewalks. Jews were removed from all professions. All the professors, all the medical people, all the civil servants were dismissed from their jobs. So it started to infiltrate into the German population, and he convinced the German population totally that the Jews were the problems of Germany. So at that time, Jews were given registration cards for identification, and later on in the year 1940, the Jews had to wear garments with a Star of David on their outer garment. Jewish businesses were confiscated, and Jews were told to sell their businesses and get out of the country. So between 1933 and 1940, about 250,000 of the entire Jewish population of 505,000 had left Germany. The other 250,000 said, you know, we've been in Germany for all these years, hundreds of years. We're German citizens, and we know the German population will eventually get rid of Hitler, but that's not the way it came about. So I was born in a little village of about 700 people, a little town called FRANKENWINHEIM in Bavaria. It was about 60 miles east of Würzburg, which was a major city, maybe 100 miles, 120 miles from Frankfurt, which is today the hub of Germany. We had about 750 people in the population. We had a total of 55 Jewish people in the town of Frankenwinheim, and about 14 families. We used to convene every Saturday in our backyard and drink beer, and I had my own beer mug when I was 5 years old. My father had served in the German army. He was called into the army. I have a picture of this in 1914, and he is on the far left. He was 22 years old at the time. He served in the German army. He was wounded in the war. So then he went back to his little hometown on the border of Switzerland, a little town called Gailingen, which was quite probably twice the size of the town that I was in, of Frankenwinheim. So I was born in 1930. This is an early picture of me when I was 3 years old. I had a younger brother. His name was Helmut. And we started to get into the lives of this nice German village. This is a picture of me on the far right in the little white hat. I was in nursery school, and the picture depicts all the kids from 2 or 3 neighboring villages that were about 3 years old. We were also taken care of by a nun. So it's interesting, one of the people in this picture I met just a couple years ago, she says, "Oh, that's me and that's my sister." And this is a picture of a very happy family, the Guggenheim family, in about 1936. And in it you will see 4 women, 2 men and a young man in front. My mother is the second one from the left. The other people are all her sisters in their 50s. One of them, the one on the far left, is one of the husbands. The other one is her brother. None of the sisters survived the war. All the sisters were exterminated. During the war years, my mother tried to correspond with her sisters and was never able to get through to any of them. At the end of the war, she found out that they all died in different extermination camps. My cousin in front, who was 13 years old in this picture, died in 1942 at the age of 19 in a concentration camp. The next picture is a picture of a very happy family. In this picture, I'm 6 years old. My brother is 4. And my dad and mother are in their mid-40s. At the age of 6 and age of 5, you really don't talk about politics. All you're interested in is the playgrounds and the people that you're playing with after school. And we had many friends in the village, not only of the Jewish kids, but everybody. But suddenly, at the age of 6, I found a picture of me with a stamp. And if you'll notice, the stamp is a Nazi stamp that everybody, no matter what age, if you were Jewish, you had to have an identification card. In that period of time, as children, we worked in the fields because our village was primarily a farming village. And at the age of, in our summer times, we worked in the fields picking corn and harvesting wheat and bringing it back. All our friends were non-Jewish friends. So things started to happen at that time. So in 1938, this is a picture of me when I was 8 years old, and I was entering the school at that time. In April of 1938, Germany marched into Austria, and that was their first foray into a foreign country, took it over without a shot being fired. In October of that year, all the Jewish students in all the schools throughout Germany were expelled from school. So at that time, at the age of 8, I had to walk 2 miles to a neighboring school to go to school because I could no longer attend a public school in Germany. In 1 month after entering the school was finally closed down. So at that time, I had no school to go to. This is a picture of the school building that I was in, that I was expelled from. This is a recent picture taken a couple of years ago. In that period of time, Jewish businesses were being boycotted. If you notice the Nazis, the writing on that picture says, Kauf nicht bei Juden means don't buy from Jews. And that was all over Germany at this point in time in the 30s. Signs were put up against Jews with a Nazi, Jews, and the word swine. So you had an entire population that was really, really absolutely dedicated against the Jewish population. This is a picture of the card stamped with a Nazi stamp that was provided to every Jewish person throughout Germany, so that if a Jew went into a restaurant, the restaurant didn't want a Jewish person to come into it. You had to show them your card. You want to go to the theater, you had to show this card. You want to go in a public park, you had to show this card. And nobody could go into it. You were always rejected. So now we come to the day that changed our lives, called KRYSTALLNACHT, 1938. In the afternoon, I recall this event very vividly. It has stayed with me forever. About 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, our little village was besieged by mobs from other communities. They went into all the Jewish homes. Some of them were farmers. They let out all the cattle, all the horses, all the chickens, let them out into the streets. They went into the synagogue and took out the Torah scroll, the Holy Scriptures, and made the Jews carry them into the town square. All the Jewish men were rounded up and eventually taken to the concentration camp. So this is the night of broken glass, November 9th, 1938. I have a picture of the synagogues that were burned at that time. When that night was finished, 520 synagogues were burned to the ground. Fire departments were called. Fire departments showed up. And you know what they did? They protected the homes that were adjacent to the synagogues and let the synagogues burn. So this is the pictures of the destruction of people carrying Torahs into the town squares, broken windows, and carrying on throughout Germany. If you notice, the woman, as she's walking by a Jewish store, is smiling because the entire German population was so ingrained with this hatred of the Jews at that time. So now we come to the pictures of my little village, of the people carrying the TORAHs from the synagogue. They made the people of the community, the Jewish people, take the TORAHs, carry them into a town square where they were piled into a terrible pile and then burned. So I have a few pictures that I was able, these are pictures from an archive that were sent to me just a couple of years ago. And the person said, you know, I'm just ashamed, but I'm going to send you these pictures. So this is a picture of a person carrying the Torah into this pile, and if you notice, all the German soldiers standing by and watching this happen. At night, that night, our grandfather was the rabbi of this town, so he was taking care of the synagogue, and we lived next door to the synagogue. Well, that night, my parents went away. My dad was taken away by the Nazis. My mother was staying with someone else. We were sleeping on the second floor of the synagogue in this corner. If I can show it. Right. In the far corner, from the far corner of the synagogue, I was sleeping in that corner, and the door was a heavy oaken door. About 10 o'clock that night, a mob gathered in front of the synagogue with torches, and I remember them trying to ram down the door to the synagogue. Fortunately, the door never gave way. And so after about a half hour, they left, but not before they broke every single window of the synagogue. So that is the synagogue after 1946. So instead of 520, we were saved. Instead of 521 synagogues, it only was 520. My brother, who was 6 years old at the time, was sleeping under that window. And when the window was broken, when the window was shattered, he ended up sleeping in a bed of glass. And I recall saying, "Don't move," when I knew that the glass had been shattered. At that period of time, my parents decided that we needed to get out of Germany. 2 8-year-old and 6-year-old boys had to leave Germany. Fortunately, we had relatives near the border of Switzerland, which is a little town called GAILINGEN and Diessenhofen, which goes right across the Rhine River. In Diessenhofen, we had relatives that somehow contacted my mother, said, get your boys out of Switzerland, we'll find them a home in Switzerland. So a week later, after Kristallnacht, my parents took us to this little town, and you'll notice a covered bridge that crosses the Rhine River. I don't know how they got us through the security at the border, but my parents at the border said, go across the border, your relatives will find you, and we have to go back to Germany. So you can imagine parents leaving 2 children, 6 and 8 years old, saying goodbye, not knowing whether they will ever see them again, not knowing whether they can get out of Germany, not knowing what their future will be. So this is a picture of that covered bridge. We ended up being taken in by two families, fortunately living in the same building in a little town outside of Zurich, Switzerland, of Baden, Switzerland, and we ended up being registered in school. So we went to public school in Switzerland. A lot of kids ended up leaving Germany for Belgium, for France, and when Hitler marched into those cities, they ended up being captured again. This was my grandfather's house in Switzerland, in Gailingen, and in 1942, my aunt was living in that house, taking care of it. My grandfather had already gone to a nursing home. She was instructed to show up at Town Square, and along with all the other Jews from this little town, and the entire region had a bunch of vans in the various town squares. They were told to get into the vans. The vans disappeared. You never heard from any of the people ever again. That was 75 years ago. This little town of Gailingen now is commemorating the taking of the Jews because all the people stood by and watched it happen. In Gailingen, we were looking at a cemetery. There's not a new Jewish burial in that town since 1946. There's a sign on the gate that says, "Let these people rest in peace." I found a couple years ago when I went back that I had a grandmother buried in the cemetery from 1830. That goes back a couple hundred years. So we were native Germans for a long time. This is my grandmother's site. My grandfather had two brothers. And two brothers came to Cleveland, Ohio in 1880, started a business. We were very successful. So I didn't know at the age of 8 that we had relatives in Cleveland, Ohio. So it ended up that my parents had to take a number. They had to find out that they could emigrate, but a person in the United States had to become responsible for them to get out of Germany. They were corresponding with Kathy Plant's grandparents, and that was not known to me. You had to take a number at that time, and you need all kinds of correspondence and get an approval to emigrate, because the United States, as it has today, has a quota system of immigration. You can only get into the United States if certain things were addressed. So my grandfather, who is the short person with the mustache, and then had to also, at that time, had an approval from the mayor of the town that we lived in that my parents were not criminals. So you needed that documentation. You needed the take a number early on in 1935 or 1936. If your number was called and if all the documentation was all right, you could find a way to emigrate. So at that point in time, I found a letter not too long ago that was addressed to the U.S. consulate by Kathy Plant's grandparents that said that they will have the obligation guaranteeing that none of them will at any time become a burden on the United States or any state, county, city, village, or municipality of the United States, and that I am under, that any who are under 16 years of age will be sent to day schools, and at least until they're 16 years or older, will not be put to work until they're able to do it. And this is a letter addressed that indicated our names and our birthdays. It was sent to the U.S. consulate. Then we had to get this approval from the mayor of the city of the town that we lived, FRANKENWINHEIM. Then in addition to that, we needed to have our number called. So if your number was not called, you couldn't emigrate. Fortunately, in 1939, November of 1939, picture of Kathy Plant's parents took responsibility for not only getting our family out. My dad had two sisters, and they were able to get out. My dad's sister, her husband and son, but they tried very hard. I found a sheaf of papers with correspondence to all kinds of agencies of my other aunt. They had her booked on a ship in November of 1941. Germany closed its border to immigration in September of that year. So she ended up in that van in Gailingen, ending up being exterminated in a concentration camp. I want to show in 1941, Hitler had conquered a lot of countries, Poland being the one that had over 3,600,000 Jewish people. At that time, everybody had to wear a garment. Every Jew had to wear a garment with a star on the garment. If you went out of the house and you didn't have this garment on, you were imprisoned. So that is really, really unbelievable. So here's a picture typically of people with the garment and the Star of David. Children had to have the star as well. And the entire Jewish population of Europe that Hitler had conquered, which included France, Belgium, Poland, Hungary. All of them had to have all the Jewish people in those countries. When they had a conference called the Wannsee Conference in 1942, they decided on the solution to the final solution to the Jewish question, which was the gas chambers of all the concentration camps. So what I've depicted in my life, I decided I think it's very, very important for my children, grandchildren, to understand what we went through. So 2 years ago, I took my entire family back to Europe, and one of the pictures that I have is my 3 grandchildren and me in front of the bridge that we crossed when I was 8 years old. And today, the 3rd generation out from Germany is taking a different tack on this. They're shameful for what their grandparents did. And so there's a movement of something called Stolpersteine in Germany, called stumbling stones. And they're putting these kind of stones in front of all the Jewish homes that were taken by the Nazis. The Nazis not only took the homes, gave them to the German people, took the jobs, took everything, took all the art, took all the furniture from the Jewish population all over Europe. So the end result is, my speech is lucky me. So I'm lucky that my parents had the foresight to see what was coming. They had the foresight to take a number. I'm lucky because we had cousins in the United States. I'm lucky that they sent us to Switzerland. I'm lucky that we were allowed to immigrate. And I'm very lucky that the Nazis were not able to break down that door of the synagogue. So if any of those things If none of those things occurred, I wouldn't be here. Fortunately, I've made a nice life, and I want to say I'm very proud to be an American citizen. I'm very proud to have found work that I love. I'm very proud to have children that go to schools of their choice. I'm very thankful to have a wonderful family. I'm very grateful to be an American citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guggenheim, for sharing your story with us today. We have heard much today and learned much, and I would like us to take a moment of silence to speak what is in your heart to God and to listen to what God might have to say to you now. Amen.
I will translate first this morning prayer. Special prayer of mourning for the victims of the Holocaust. And then I will chant it in its original Hebrew. Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the souls of all our brethren, men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered and suffocated and burned to ashes. May their memory endure, inspiring truth and loyalty in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Eden, Dei, Himen, Ducata, As die reign besedrigen af echo, leolamim. Utzror bitzror hachayim et nishmodehem. Adonai, hu nachalatam. V'yanuch v'shalom al mishkevotehem. V'nomar Amen.
Sometimes there are no words. I am grateful to everyone who has given us words telling the story. Thank you, Armin. On a day like today, we all lost family in the Holocaust, each of us. We are obligated to remember those who died, even those who were not connected by family blood. They are our family. And sometimes when there are no words, we're given words to say. On the inside of your handout, you have words that we have been saying for over 2,000 years now. When we remember those who we loved. These are not words that talk about remembering. These are words that talk about praising God. We are grateful for those lives. As Armin can say, as we imagine and see that little boy walking on his own with his little brother, and he says his story is lucky me. And he lost all of his family. We take these words and we praise God for what we do have. The tradition in Judaism is that if you are a mourner, then you rise for this Kaddish, this holiness prayer. If you are comfortable with standing up, please rise. You are invited to read this in the Aramaic. You have a transliteration in front of you. You are invited to read it in the English. But all mourners are asked to read this out loud. We read together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. La'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shalama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We read together the last paragraph in English. May the one who causes peace to reign in the high heavens, let peace descend on us, on all Israel, and on all the world. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the Holocaust Remembrance Service. We'd like to thank the following individuals and organizations who have made donations to help sponsor the awards. We had numerous generous donors that remain anonymous. Elizabeth and Tom Arsenault, the Catholic Diocese of Shreveport, Hay Street Baptist Church, Sidney Kent, Kathy Plant, Mattress Plus, North Louisiana Jewish Federation, Connie and Donald Posner, St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral, St. Paul's Episcopal Church. If you'd like to help sponsor any of the prizes for the teachers or the students, please contact the North Louisiana Jewish Federation. If you'd like to chair or host a future Holocaust memorial service, please contact Rabbi Jana. We're grateful to Rabbi Jana, the Holocaust Remembrance Service Committee, and the North Louisiana Jewish Federation for coordinating this year's service. Believe me, they made it very easy for me to come here and be a chairperson. We'd like also to thank once again the First Baptist Church of Shreveport and Senior Pastor Dr. Jeff Raines for hosting our service this year. We invite you to make your way to the foyer as you leave and partake in the reception hosted by First Baptist Church Shreveport congregation. And look forward to seeing you at the next year Holocaust Remembrance program. Thank you very much.